Today, I'm going to compare the Nike Vaporfly 3 to a £99 super shoe alternative. This is the Kiprun KD900X.2, and yes, it costs just £99. So how this video is going to work is I'm going to very briefly compare the two side by side. I've done a little bit of running in the KD already. I've done lots of running in the Nike Vaporfly 3, and then later tonight I've got a big track session where I'm going to compare the two side by side. Half the session will be in the £99 shoe, and the other half of the session will be in the £240 Nike Vaporfly 3. Now, why am I doing this? Well, to be honest with you, I'm quite sick of the prices of all these super shoes. At £240, you can pretty much get 2.5 pairs of this one. And can there really be that much of a difference? I'm not so sure. Now, in the Kiprun KD900X.2,
there's a 40mm stack in the rear and a 32 in the front. That is an 8mm drop from back to front.
If you compare that with the Nike Vaporfly 3, the Vaporfly 3 has a 40mm stack height, which is right on that legal limit. So in the Kiprun shoe, there's a really flexible TPU plate in it. You can see just how easy it is for me to crumble that in half. And I think that's going to be quite a key characteristic of this shoe. It's hopefully going to allow for quite a soft, gentle ride that's going to be less aggressive than the Vaporfly 3. And I know this shoe is an aggressive shoe, and ultimately when you are trying to run as fast as you can, sometimes the aggression is needed. But if you compare the plates in here, this is a real task just to be able to clench this plate up and down, and I think that's probably why this shoe might be as fast as it is, but it's not necessarily for everyone. The Kiprun comes in at 204 grams in my UK size 10, compare that to 227 grams of the Vaporfly 3, so quite a bit heavier. So the Kiprun is more than 10% lighter. Now, in terms of the lacing structure, I must admit the Vaporfly 3 has one of the best lacing structures I have ever used. They have these little knots on the laces which make it almost impenetrable in terms of laces coming undone. I'm a big fan of that. In terms of the Kiprun, slightly different lacing structure, and I would admit on a couple of my easy runs I have had to adjust those. Now, in terms of the grip on the outsole, both of these shoes have reasonably good outsole grip. Here in the UK at the moment, it is very wet, it is very cold, and it is quite slippy outside. I've had no issue with either of the shoes. One thing I would say is in terms of the durability of these shoes, I've done 40 kilometers in the Kiprun, and in this Vaporfly 3 model, I would say I've had other models, but in this specific one, I've done nearly 50 kilometers, of which have all been racing, so I've run a lot harder in this shoe. And if you just compare the outsole on both of these shoes, there is quite a stark difference. Now, I'm not going to take that as the be all and end all, as I mentioned, because a lot of the mileage I've done in the Vaporfly 3 have been races and hard efforts. Now, one of the biggest differences in the shoes is the ankle. There is a generous amount of protection in the ankle on the Vaporfly 3, but towards the top of the heel on the Nike Vaporfly 3, there's a really thin and quite aggressive line of material, and I've had some ankle digging in issues before, and it's blistered my ankles a few times. Now, if you compare that with the Kiprun, it's a lot more softer, it's more generous, and it's a lot kinder on the skin. With it being a lot lighter as well, you're not really sacrificing the weight for that added bit of protection, so that might be something worth considering. Now, I need to mention as well, Kiprun have very kindly sent me these shoes, but amazingly they have said I am free to review these shoes as I want to. There is no need for me to promote their shoe, I'm not being paid by them, and I'm allowed to review this shoe as negatively or as positively as I like. They are absolutely backing this shoe to the hilt. They are so confident in this shoe. I'm very much looking forward to testing it. That's pretty much everything covered. Let's take these two down to the track and let's see how they get on in a proper hard track session.
So now it's time to put these shoes into the test. And we're here at my local track. And we come here every Friday evening to do our track sessions. But tonight there's a bit of a twist because we're going to do half the session in this shoe and the other half in this shoe. What's on the menu then for tonight's track session? Well, we've got 4 by 1K at about our half marathon pace, then 4 by 800 meters at about our 10 to 5K pace. And then we're going to finish by 4 by 400 meters almost as fast as we possibly can. And each of the sets, we're going to do half of them in this shoe and the other half in this shoe. So let's see how we get on.
By 1K in the Vaporflies. All right, ready, deal? Yep. First rep in the Kipruns. Yeah.
Okay, we're halfway through tonight's testing. My word, I'm not going to reveal the difference, but it's incredible.
All right, and just like that, we are back in the house after a very cold, a very wet, but a very enjoyable evening. My word, I am surprised by both of these shoes, to be quite honest with you. Before I give you my opinion and what I think about these shoes, it's important to run through the data that we've just collected and compare exactly how these shoes have got on against each other. So I'm using my Coros app here with all the data on from my session. We did the first 2 1K reps in the Vaporfly 3s and we averaged 311 for those. Now we switched that up straight away into 2 more reps in the Kiprun. Interestingly, we averaged 308, so 3 seconds quicker. Now what I would say is those first 2 reps in the Vaporfly 3, I could be warming up, so maybe that's something we need to consider. But already the Kiprun, 3 seconds quicker. Then we dropped in some 800 meters, which we're hoping to be slightly quicker. We did 308 and a 305 in the Kiprun. That was followed by a 304 and a 307 in the Vaporfly 3. So relatively poor pacing from myself, but the average paces of that set were relatively similar. And then we finished the session, as you remember, with those 400 meter reps. Now, the first 2 reps I did in the Kiprun, they were done at a 2:54 average kilometer pace. And then we finished with the Vaporfly 3 when I was arguably the most fatigued during the session. And I managed to do those in 2:54 and a 2:52. So the Vaporfly 3 was just a little bit quicker. But now the stats and the numbers are out of the way. The most important thing is how did I feel these 2 shoes compared during the session. Now I am genuinely surprised how this session went. I fully expected the Nike Vaporfly 3 to absolutely smoke the Kiprun out of the water. Let's first of all start with the ride. Genuinely, the Kiprun is way comfier. Is that even a word? Way comfier? The Kiprun is a lot comfier. It's far comfier. There we go. The Kiprun is far comfier than the Vaporfly 3. Yes, the Vaporfly 3 is fast. We know it's fast. But was the Kiprun miles slower than it? I think the argument would say that looking at those results, it's very similar. Now, this is a very small sample size and everyone will probably be different. I don't know if it's the flexible plate in there or the really soft, forgiving foam. The ride felt so much comfier over those longer 1 kilometer reps in the Kiprun than it did in the Vaporfly 3. Now the Vaporfly 3 is extremely aggressive, so much so that when I swapped over for the first time, it felt like I was going barefoot round the track. One of the issues I had during my track session was around the Kiprun. I found there was a little bit of ankle slippage. I had to readjust my lacing halfway through. I mentioned that I wasn't a massive fan of the laces. I did have to adjust the lacing because I had a little bit of a slippage in the heel. I didn't notice it later on in the session, but it was something that was a little bit concerning early on. Hopefully that's just a one-off. Now, in terms of the overall speed, because ultimately that's what we are really obsessed with when it comes to a carbon plated shoe, I actually found the Kiprun shoe comfier at those slower, longer reps. So the 800 meter reps and the 1K reps. And I felt hitting that speed a lot easier. And when I put the Vaporfly 3s on, I hit those paces fine. I just felt the aggression in the shoe made it just that little bit harder. One thing I would mention is I'm in the middle of a training block and I am often carrying quite a lot of fatigue into these sessions. And possibly the foam and the softer, more flexible plate in the Kiprun is just more suited for this type of training when I'm tired compared to a really aggressive, sharp shoe like the Vaporfly 3. So that might be something worth considering if you're looking at buying the Kiprun. Now, I think where the distinct differences came for me with the Vaporfly 3 and where it did come into its own was on those 400 meter sessions when I'm really trying to open up the tank. I found it just a little bit easier to turn my legs over a little bit quicker. Now I know there was only a 1 second difference, but over 400 meters, that's quite a lot. And one thing I would also say is those last 2 reps I did do in the Vaporfly 3, I would have been at my most fatigued. So to be able to pull out the fastest rep of the block in the last rep of the evening goes quite a long way in my opinion. So the ultimate question is, will I be using this shoe in the future, and will I be using it over the Vaporfly 3? Well, I think I still got a lot of testing to be done, and I ultimately need to test this in a race. So next week I'm going to put a park run to the test, give it a pretty much max effort. You can get a lot from a track session, but you can't get the full picture. Now, one thing I certainly will be doing is putting this into my shoe rotation, especially for tempo workouts and track workouts. I found that added softness and forgiveness in the heel and in the turnover just so much nicer to train in than wearing something that's more aggressive. I think there's also a lot of work for me to do mentally, because I know that the Nike Vaporfly 3 has success all around the world and it's renowned. Nike have a massive marketing team. They work with some of the biggest runners, biggest influencers in the world. So they're going to have a massive campaign to tell you that this shoe really is one of the best ever made. Kiprun, on the other hand, maybe don't quite have the same pull. They have obviously got Jimmy Gressier, who is a very successful runner in his own right, of course, winning gold in the World Champs in the summer just gone. But for now, this shoe is going in my rotation. I'm definitely going to test it out in an all-out race soon, because I think there is a long way for this shoe to go. But I think where I would draw the line here is if you're considering wearing a carbon plated shoe for the very first time, this honestly is perfect. There is little cost to consider in terms of choice between the two. It's £140 cheaper. At £99 is less of a risk if it's not for you. There's also that protection of it being a more flexible and softer plate, as well as the foam being really responsive and quite cushioning as well. They've also not cheaped out on the protection as well. There's plenty of support for your heel and the ankle, and the upper is a really nice lightweight fit too. I've genuinely been seriously surprised by what this shoe can offer. I thought there would be a massive disparity between the very best in class and one of the world's cheapest super shoes. That's all from me today, guys. I really appreciate you watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Goodbye.